In every great battle, there were those whose arrival on the field fundamentally shifted the tide. We are used to calling modern soldiers in camouflage special forces, but the concept of the elite was born thousands of years ago. Today, we will trace their evolution from ancient chariots to gunpowder empires. At the dawn of civilization, the elite were those who could afford the most cutting-edge technology of the time. Egyptian charioteers were the first prototype of mobile elite troops. They were the tanks of the Bronze Age, fast, maneuverable, and incredibly expensive to maintain. However, the first systematic elite appeared in Persia. The famous Immortals served as the personal guard of the King of Kings. Their number always remained constant, exactly 10,000 men, no more, no less. If a warrior fell, a trained reservist immediately took his place. To the enemy, it seemed as if the Persians were literally rising from the dead in the heat of battle. The Immortals wore scale armor hidden under bright silk tunics. Armed with a short sword, a spear, and a bow, they were truly versatile combatants. Yet, in the West, a power was rising that could challenge them. We are talking about the Spartan hoplites. Their phalanx was a single organism where every man covered his neighbor with his shield. For a Spartan, losing was worse than dying, as cowardice stripped a man of his civil rights. The story of the 300 Spartans remains a vivid example of their mastery and courage. The Roman Empire elevated warfare to an absolute science by creating the Praetorian Guard. Initially just bodyguards for generals, they soon became a dominant political force. Praetorians received triple pay and lived in elite barracks within Rome itself. Their influence was so great that they could appoint or overthrow emperors. However, on the battlefield, they remained top-tier professionals, as Praetorians were hand-picked from veteran legionnaires, making entry into the guard extremely difficult. When Rome fell, Byzantium took up the mantle. Here, the cataphracts, super-heavy cavalry, took center stage. Both rider and horse were entirely encased in scale or plate armor. They were a steel battering ram capable of shattering any enemy formation. Cataphracts combined the power of Eastern cavalry with Roman discipline. Around the same time, the Varangian Guard entered the emperor's service. Composed of fierce Vikings and Anglo-Saxons, the Varangians were famous for a fanatical loyalty that could not be bought, only earned. Moving to the Far East, we find the samurai caste. Their swords, katanas, were considered works of art and a part of the warrior's soul. But the samurai were not just masters of the blade, they were also expert horse archers. The Bushido code strictly regulated every step of a warrior's life. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, an even more unique elite emerged, the Mamluks. They were trained in specialized military schools from childhood. As outsiders in the Islamic world, they were loyal only to their core and the Sultan. The Mamluks developed the finest light and medium cavalry of their era. It was they who dealt a crushing defeat to the Mongols, halting their western expansion. In medieval Europe, knighthood was the pinnacle of the elite. The heavy cavalrymen remained the dominant force in the battlefield for centuries, but by the 14th century, the tide turned with the rise of the Swiss pikemen. The Swiss proved that disciplined infantry with long pikes could defeat knightly cavalry. They were rugged Highlanders who took no prisoners and knew no fear. A Swiss battalia moved like a single steel hedgehog, bristling in all directions. Soon they faced rivals, the German Landsknechts. These mercenaries were famous for their outrageously colorful outfits and massive Zweihander swords. Between the Swiss and the Landsknechts, a bad war was fought, a deadly rivalry with no mercy. This was an era where professional mercenary skill was valued above knightly chivalry. In the 17th century, perhaps the most beautiful elite in history appeared on the battlefield. The Polish winged hussars struck terror by their appearance alone. Large wooden frames with feathers on the riders' backs produced a whistling sound that spooked enemy horses. Hussars used 5-meter hollow pikes capable of skewering multiple opponents at once. They were the final word in heavy cavalry before firearms became dominant. On the other side of the lines stood the Ottoman Janissaries. They were the first regular infantry in Europe to use muskets on a mass scale. Their ferocity during sieges was legendary. The symbol of the Janissaries was the cooking pot, emphasizing their unity as a family. As firearms evolved, warfare became more formalized. In the France of Louis XIV, the musketeers of the military household became the gold standard for guards. These were elite units recruited from nobles loyal personally to the monarch. In Prussia, King Frederick William I created the Potsdam Giants. He recruited soldiers at least 190 centimeters, or 6'3", from all over Europe. While the Giants rarely saw actual combat, they were a symbol of Prussian might. In Russia, Peter the Great took a different path, creating his elite Preobrazhensky and Semyonovsky regiments. They became the Iron Corps of the Russian army. 18th-century Guard regiments were the embodiment of perfect order and discipline. A Guard officer of that time was both an intellectual and a fearless warrior. What united all these diverse units across the centuries? First, continuous training from a very young age. The elite were never a militia, they were always professionals. Second, the best equipment the treasury could afford. Third, and most importantly, ideology and esprit de corps. A warrior of an elite unit knew he was worth 10 ordinary soldiers. That is all for today. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.